Sabrina's 70s comic, The New Look. Hilda says that this furniture is what she's wanted for this room, but she forbids Ambrose from sitting on it. That's a pretty mundane, typical plot, but it makes sense. It's realistic that she wouldn't want her new furniture to get germs on it or get dirt on it right away, but that's not the kind of plot I would expect from a title like that. Naturally, Ambrose refuses to sit on furniture with plastic covers on it. Yeah, they are awful. Thankfully, Hilda actually does relent and decide not to put them on right after both of them complain about it. She asks to brush Sabrina off before she sits on it. Hilda's easily irritated, so it makes sense for her to be in this position, forgetting the fact that she could just zap any stains away. You don't need witches to do this plot, so it seems lazy, as it's pretty easy to come up with because it's so based on real life. I actually giggled when Ambrose said, "I hope you realize how ridiculous this looks, Hilda," as she was brushing him off. He wishes he had the old furniture back, because sitting on these precious chairs, he's afraid to breathe. Too bad she can't cast a "it stays clean forever" spell. It's completely nonsensical at first that she says no newspapers on the new couch. At this point, she has to just be using this as an excuse to bully them. The newspaper ink never comes off on your fingers. Granted, since when do I read the newspaper? Maybe it does, but I don't buy it. They make fun of Hilda by levitating above the furniture because that's the only way to please her. They'd be convincing if they told her that she could just zap away any stain. But the point of the plot is that she doesn't want any stain to get on the furniture for the first time, whether she can get rid of it with magic or not. Predictably, she thinks it's a fine idea because she's a witch and loves magic and wants her chairs to stay clean. She says she's gonna sit across the room from her lovely new furniture with a cup of coffee. Since when did she ever drink coffee? I forgot about the one silly single off panel really early on in the comic where she had coffee. It's not unrealistic for someone to try a new drink though, but because it's so rare for her, it only seems to happen so that she could trip on nothing for no reason and spill coffee on the furniture. I love the twist that she spilled the coffee after all of this time. But it should have been potion brew instead so it would feel a bit more natural, but whatever. Predictably, Hilda's glad that the furniture was stained because furniture is like a new car. You can't enjoy it until you put the first scratch in it. So the story ends with her telling them to sit and relax because everything's cool. I think she only said guys and everything's cool because she spent so much time with Sabrina. This story, with almost no magic in it at all, was about Hilda not letting her family sit on the new furniture that we're probably never gonna see again, so it must be in a parallel universe. It looks hideous anyways. It's all yellow. She only relaxes when she spills coffee on it. I love that she was the one to do that, but it's forced that she tripped so easily. The story was worth it for how funny it was that she brushed off Ambrose and he commented on how silly it was. But this must have been a very easy story to come up with because it doesn't require witches as characters. It's something that could happen in real life. I just felt sorry for her family, but I loved that they stood up for themselves. She let them have a victory right away when they refused to sit on plastic covers. And it was amusing that they levitated over the furniture to make fun of her. Okay, that required witches. But that was it. Nobody ever points out that she should just use a spell so that the furniture can never get stained. We're supposed to assume that's impossible. Nobody points out that she could just zap away any stain. Sabrina says that's going to stain as if it matters. Archie's Joke Book 275. Hilda and Zelda see that Sabrina and Harvey's ski lift is stuck. Usually Harvey and Sabrina do stuff together apart from the ants unless they're at her house. Zelda wonders why Sabrina doesn't use her magic, and she's told that she made the ski lift get stuck to have an excuse to kiss him a lot. Then Sabrina sees Harvey falling down while skiing and pities him, so she asks the spirit world to give him something to help with his skiing. So he sees another ski attached to his pants behind him. Why wouldn't she just make him a good skier? Archie's TV Laugh Out, issue 81. Sabrina's asked by her fairy witch mother if she wants the answers to this exam she's taking. She almost never has a fairy witch mother, so when she does have one, it's confusing. What does this woman have to gain in this? Money? Sabrina says she never uses witchcraft to gain an unfair advantage in school and as her principles, which would make for a boring story sometimes. And she's not using a whispering text bubble, so people should really hear her and react. And when she's expected to describe the Ottoman Empire, she thinks that sometimes she wishes she didn't have those principles. Sabrina's told she wrote down the wrong answer, and she feels that with magic, she could easily change her answer before the teacher would have a chance to mark the papers. She explains that there's no point in getting an A+ if you don't really deserve it, which is true. School's about testing what she knows, after all. She goes to gym, and we see her think about the fact that she could use spells to do backward triple flips and other stunts. And she sees a girl that's truly talented, and knows that it wouldn't be fair to the other students who really work hard for their A's. This principle of hers really contrasts later stories in the franchise, so I can respect this. I'm glad I'm at least seeing her use magic in her imagined spots, even if she doesn't really do it. She goes to a long lunch line and tells her witch fairy godmother not to put her at the head of that line. Somehow no one's shown reacting to her talking to her. She's asked to sit at a guy's table, and then a girl named Sheila spills soup on her on purpose so she could sit next to him instead while she's cleaning up. Too bad she doesn't stand up to her. But it makes sense that she wouldn't want a whole bunch of witnesses to her magic, because then she'd have to erase a bunch of memories. She cleans herself up, but tells the witch that she said she doesn't use magic in school. But thankfully, when the school day's over and Sheila says Tommy won't accept a bike ride from her when he could ride in her car, Sabrina finally uses magic to turn the car into a horse-drawn carriage. I thought she was going to make it disappear, which would actually guarantee that he wouldn't want to ride in it. And it could have a logical explanation because she could assume that the car was stolen. With this, he might want to ride a horse-drawn carriage for curiosity's sake. So after Sabrina makes magic obvious and Sheila just stares, Sabrina gives the guy who's not Harvey a ride on her bike after all. At least it was nice of Sabrina to give the horse some oats. This story is about Sabrina repeatedly refusing to use magic in school, talking to her fairy witch mother. A concept that was mostly exclusive to the early Archie's Madhouse stories and is confusing because of how rare and unexplained it is. She should have been Hilda, or at least a relative of hers. The story was saved from being boring and frustrating because the artist kept showing us Sabrina using magic at school, even if it was in imagined spots, so it was still entertaining. I could respect Sabrina's perseverance and morality in not wanting to be unfair to the other students. But I hated that she didn't use magic to humiliate Sheila in a subtle way that wouldn't make magic obvious. She did it in a way that was really obvious, but I hate that she didn't use magic on her when she spilled soup on her. That made me miss the 90s comic where she wasn't too scared to stand up to a bully. She can erase memories. It's good that that mean girl was in the story because it made it satisfying when Sabrina finally turned her car into a horse-drawn carriage to get a guy to go on a bike ride with her, because the rule against magic stops applying when school is over and she's outside. It was a little confusing that the guy wasn't Harvey though, because he's always her boyfriend in this comic. So I had to assume that this was taking place before they started dating or during a breakup. She is better off with that guy than a klutz like Harvey. But Harvey's actually interesting to watch. Well, this guy's got no personality. We didn't even see him figure out Sheila spilled soup on her on purpose and tell her she can't sit with him. But the story's a nostalgic throwback to the Archie's Madhouse stories with the fairy witch mother there. Archie's Joke Book 276. Sabrina says her TV is getting funny reception and she assumes it's a plane flying over, but it's actually some witches flying over the house that Hilda conveniently knows are her friends. I guess they called her ahead of time and said they were gonna do that offhandedly. Why would this wreck their reception? Then Harvey says to Sabrina while resting in a haystack glide ride that he likes going on the hayride with her family, and he's staring at the sky. So he's blissfully unaware that the hay is on a giant flying broom. It's sweet that they have a great date. It's interesting that her hands are flying for them. Hilda doesn't like Harvey, so she must have needed to get peer pressured into this. These two weren't on the future Sabrina timeline. Archie's Joke Book 278. Hilda tells Sabrina musingly that she's gonna play leapfrog with her grumpy neighbor, even though he's grumpy. Sabrina says that's a kids' game, and of course Hilda means she'll turn him into a giant frog and leap right over him. Then Ambrose sits in front of a piano and says to watch him tickle the ivories, and Hilda says that's all he can do, and we see that the piano is magically laughing, because witches get so bored that they like to make puns come to life. These two also weren't on the timeline. Archie's TV Laugh Out, issue 82. Hilda says she doesn't know how she let Sabrina talk her into going to a mortal picnic because she thinks they suck. Then why did she go with her? I guess she just wanted to humor her because she loves her. I have to assume that the reason she thinks they suck is that no magic's allowed. Sabrina says they're fun, and Hilda says, sure, if you're an ant. And Zelda says, well, you are her aunt, Hilda. I'm surprised that she made a pun in this comic. Hilda sarcastically says, very funny, which makes the pun feel less out of place just to have a joke. She's not allowed to just zap up some lunch when Sabrina wants to start up the barbecue grill, because then it wouldn't be a picnic. She coughs from the smoke, so she pours water on it. But really, she could have just gone somewhere else and told her to telepathically contact her when food was ready. She tells a bee to get away from her and is stupid enough to, rather than create a force field, try to zap a tiny thing with magic. So the beam topples over a tree and almost hits Sabrina. Maybe she really wanted the satisfaction of hitting a tiny target accurately and convinced herself it'd be accurate. Before she can even eat the food, she sees an army of ants after it. She zaps, and rather than simply killing the ants like I expected, she goes through the convoluted lengths of zapping up an anteater. I wonder if this will make any biologists confused because it's not in its natural habitat. Sabrina says there's only one way to get Hilda to relax, and she thinks to give her a force field. Yeah, why didn't Hilda think of this? Stories about this picnic and camping make me wonder if it's really as unfun as it looks. This is a story about Hilda complaining about camping for a bunch of good, realistic reasons. And it takes until the end of the story for her to use magic properly. The 70s comic has two different stories where Hilda hates camping, so this isn't that impressive of a plot. Archie's TV Laugh Out issue 83. Hilda notices that Sabrina hasn't looked so down since she took the training wings off her broom. Sabrina says that handsome lifeguard was about to ask her out when some girl came along and distracted him. Isn't she dating Harvey? Hilda's upset that she let that happen when she's a witch and gives her a love charm that's been in her family for generations. It's guaranteed to charm anyone who's within 50 feet. That means it would affect people other than just the one person she'd want. So she has no reason to bother with it when she could just cast a spell on one person. She puts it around Salem to show it off, and he gets surrounded by lovesick cats. Suddenly, the next panel, he's back inside, and she steals the love charm from him, and Hilda gets thanked. Thankfully, Sabrina feels bad about having the charm. She won't be attracting him, the charm will. And she thinks she's as good looking as any of the girls on the beach, so she shouldn't have to use witchcraft to get a boy. She throws the charm in the trash where anyone could get at it. It'd obviously be more responsible to just warp it home. Gee, I wonder if someone will get it. It turns out he was talking to a girl named Rosalind, like her rival from the Madhouse stories. He tells Sabrina that he was just telling Rosalind how much he missed her, and says he was only teasing Sabrina before, and asks her if she'd like to go to the movies tonight. Then he deserts her for another woman, and Sabrina stupidly walks away sadly without checking to see if she got her love charm. So the story ends with the girl getting a boyfriend who is only brainwashed into being infatuated with her. So the instant she'll stop wearing the necklace, he'll dump her. At least I won't have to see that. She doesn't look that bad. This story was about Sabrina wanting to attract a handsome lifeguard, even though she's got a boyfriend, and she decides not to use a love charm, but then someone else gets a hold of it, when she could have easily zapped it away. Archie's Joke Book 284. Sabrina tells Hilda that she'll need yeast to make a cake rise, and Hilda literally makes it rise with magic, as in, she just floats it. Then someone approaches her, taking a survey on whether she's a cat or dog lover, and he gets scared by the pets she suddenly has. Archie's TV Laugh Out issue 85. Reggie thinks it's funny that Veronica, Betty, and Sabrina are gonna rough it out and asks which motel. Veronica says there are no motels at the park, and this is for school credit. So no wonder they're deciding to go. How is it for school credit? At least there is an explanation to make this feel a bit less forced. Reggie wonders if they're going to be scared of the big wild animals, which is something to worry about. Veronica says something that she should know isn't true, and Archie is just as mean as Reggie as the car drives away, which is shocking. Reggie tells Archie to go home and get his camping gear because the two of them are going to have a few laughs. Logically, why would Archie even agree to this? Pranking Veronica is just going to get her mad at him, and she's his girlfriend. And he's being told to prank his backup girlfriend too. But it is genre savvy of them because no matter what happens to make them mad, they always keep asking him for more dates, eventually. So I wish he at least explained that. The girls think it's fun being under the stars. Then Reggie sees them and they hear a howling sound, scaring them into the tent. Conveniently, only Sabrina sees Reggie and Archie, and you'd think that all three of them would hear them laughing. And it wouldn't just be Sabrina. She uses magic to scare them with a lion and a bear. Let me guess, there's also going to be a tiger. The guys run in front of Sabrina, caring enough to tell them to run for their lives. Sabrina plays dumb, and Archie says the weird phrase, "in back of us." Sabrina says she only sees some squirrels, and accuses the guys of being scared of the woods. And then the story ends. At least it was a twist that a tiger didn't show up. This story was about Sabrina going camping with the girls because all of a sudden they can do that for school credit. And Reggie doubts that a bunch of girls won't be scared of the wild animals, and howls to scare them. You'd think that every one of the girls would have heard them laughing, instead of only Sabrina noticing them and getting to summon wild animals to scare them. I guess the wild animals are brainwashed so that they won't actually hurt them, just try to scare them. Archie didn't need to be in the story because he was being redundant and confusing by acting just like Reggie. I guess he assumed he wouldn't get caught by his girlfriends and he planned on hiding behind the bushes. Archie's Joke Book 285. Sabrina shrinks herself and cleans her dollhouse the mortal way for no reason, and then after she's exhausted from it, Hilda expects her to clean the house the mortal way, which makes no sense because they could clean it magically. What else are they going to use their magic for? And Hilda being opposed to using magic makes even less sense when she looks like this. These two also weren't on the featured Sabrina timeline. Archie's Joke Book 286. Sabrina says witches don't have dollhouses, and instead have houses with tiny gnomes in them. Then the story demonstrates why that'd never be the case because one of them asks Sabrina when she's going to get someone to fix her sink. Then Grundy tells Sabrina that her work on the balance beam is great, and that's because once you learn to balance yourself on a broom, this is easy. I guess that makes sense, but since flying brooms are usually stated to be magical on their own, them having a balancing spell would make even more sense. I don't really see how either of these was funny. The first one was silly, but the second one's not a joke. Archie at Riverdale High, 1972, issue 87. Sabrina Ambrose acknowledged that it's going to be Hilda's birthday tomorrow. It was wise of Hilda to make sure he remembered. I remember that story where she was really mad at him for forgetting. Sabrina had a hard time thinking of what gifts to get her. Too bad she didn't just give them a list telling them what to get her. She just really wants to take the chance of being surprised, even after centuries. Ambrose holds what looks like a newspaper, with the headline, Witchcraft Journal. And he probably says because of that it was very easy for him to figure out what to buy her. A shatterproof mirror. That doesn't make sense because there's no logical reason a mirror would shatter on its own just because of a woman's ugliness. Which I know is the joke the writer intended, but it'd make more sense if either Ambrose was joking, or he meant that Hilda deliberately shatters her mirrors out of a hatred for how she looks because she spends most of her time on Earth nowadays.